How do we keep the planet moving towards a greener future? It doesn't happen without driven entrepreneurs and inspired social impact leaders like you. This podcast will give the tools and insight you need to join the sustainability movement and save the world. This is Thinking Green with Mohammed Abdallah.
Welcome back, Thinking Green Nation. This is your host, Mohammed Abdallah. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest. His name is Jason Cortes. Jason and I met first at Fully Charged in 2019, Austin, Texas. Really special event. It was the first event that they hosted here in the States. And at the time, Jason, you were working for a group called the JF Petroleum Group. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Awesome, man. So Jason's story is really special to me because he also followed somewhat of a similar trajectory, transitioning out of the oil and gas industry and into the renewable energy and electric vehicle charging industry. So Rivian is your current employer, which is pretty sweet. But I want you to go a little bit back in time, Jason, and tell us a little bit about your story, where you grew up, how you got involved in oil and gas, and your work currently at Rivian.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm glad to be here, and I'm just thankful that since we met in 2019, we've been able to carry on this friendship, and I really believe that was a meeting by design, and we've been able to work together since then, and look forward to continuing to do that. I'm a native Texan, active deep in the heart of oil country. I reside in San Antonio, and I'm currently in my fifth year in the electric vehicle charging space. But backing up, I entered the electric vehicle charging space in 2017 by way of the company that you mentioned, JF Petroleum Group. And, it was an interesting journey to leave oil and gas and, the petroleum industry to move into clean technology. But there was an intentional path that was laid out. And my entrance into the EV space was found while working far downstream in the petroleum industry at the nozzle level. So I was at the subsector of retail gas stations, convenience stores, as well as commercial and industrial refueling centers. And so the companies that I was working for, and I spent 7 years in that industry, but the companies I was working for were distributors of fuel dispensing and storage equipment, companies that would sell, install, service gas station and convenience store equipment, everything that related to fuel dispensing, from the fuel dispensers, fuel storage tank, point of sale, inventory management systems, and so forth, underground piping, you name it. We would build from the ground up a gas station, or, like I said, a commercial and industrial fuel refueling center. And so 3 years into my career, I was recruited by a company that was forward thinking and saw the value of future proofing their company and invited me to come on board and to help develop some emerging technologies. And that company at the time was Petroleum Solutions Inc. And I went to work for them and began to develop a business unit within the company that was focused on EV charger deployment. And so, right in the middle of the petroleum equipment industry, we went to market via partnership with a well-known manufacturer of chargers and the leading network provider and charging provider. And, we went to market selling EV chargers, but as you can imagine, it wasn't a quick sell because our traditional customer base was the gas station, C-store environment. So these retailers, wholesalers, independent owner operators, jobbers, you name it, they in 2017 had this knee-jerk reaction to EV. And so it was looking to find those forward-thinking businesses that wanted to just really expand their business footprint. They sell petroleum, they dispense petroleum. And so the introduction was, hey, it's time to dispense electrons, because that is the future where we're going with the prevalence of EVs that are coming to market.
Yeah, indeed. The dispensation of electrons is the entire new energy economy, and what that will look like is going to be really centered around that generation of electrons, dispensation of them, storage of them, right? So we can go all day with this, you and I, but So one of the things that I'm curious is there aren't a lot of oil and gas companies sitting around, thinking about diversifying their revenue streams into EV charging, at least not, back in, 2017 or 16, when Petroleum Inc. started looking into this. What do you think was sort of the trigger or the tipping point that maybe some of these smaller operators were like, hey, we're a little more dynamic. We have this niche with, the C stores and the owner operated, gas station, ma and pa's. We can go in and maybe sell them a few charging stations and, diversify our revenue stream, or what was kind of the thought process and why did they elect to hit the go button?
Well, you'd be surprised at who was responsive to the message, because the big names that you would think that would be readily on board to diversify and to, basically expand their fueling portfolio by incorporating chargers, they somewhat had a knee-jerk reaction. And then there was these other smaller entities that were forward thinking and said, okay, I see it. I sell fuel, I sell gas, I sell diesel. It just makes sense that with the EVs that are coming, that I would dispense electrons, that I would sell electrons to refuel these EVs. And so finding the right audience and then crafting a message. So that was really the part of it, developing a message that helped get through that, hey, we're not bringing EV chargers that are replacement technology. We're not advocating pull your fuel dispensers out and put EV chargers in, although there are sites that have done that. But, that wasn't the message. The message was, hey, let's future-proof your business. I believe that petroleum, at least petroleum dispensing, as we know at the traditional gas station, I believe that they have a lifespan of potentially 25 to 30 years before it's completely displaced. And that's, of course, a process of attrition and as we migrate, to clean technology. But, so there are some that would argue with that. They say, oh, no, petroleum's not going anywhere because this, because that. But the point being is, we know what trajectory we're on, whether we look at it from a government standpoint, from an OEM standpoint, a number of angles we can look at it and see the trajectory that we're on. But back to your question, though, the messaging was important, and the right audience was finding, was important.
And having that leadership team supporting the concept, right? Allowing y'all to go out and add this as a, product or service that you're able to offer. But so kind of fast forwarding a couple of years, all of a sudden I wake up one day, I get a phone call, and I realize that you've transitioned over to, the latest and greatest startup in electric vehicles, as many would deem. And I think a lot of people are very excited about what Rivian is doing and the electric vehicles that are coming onto the market, whether it be the R1S or the R1T. Did I say those right? Okay. All right, good. But tell us a little bit about what kind of drove you to, seek opportunity there, without obviously violating any NDAs or anything like that. I want to make sure that I'm on, kosher terms with Rivian, with everything. But I am very curious to kind of hear from you at a high level. What is it that attracted you to their culture, to working over there, to their vehicles, to their brand, so on and so forth?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to answer that question, I'll set the table by backing up a little bit. In your earlier episodes on Thinking Green, you give your origin story of Good Faith Energy, which I found very inspiring. The first two episodes, I went right through them listening to them because the messaging there, the inspiration that was behind the vision of GFE and all that. And I even noticed that on the most recent episode, you revisited that. But hearing how the name came to be and just the sharing of those moments that are really were divine inspiration when you hear it talked about, like your moment at White Sands. I just heard you recount that on your episode. I'm not going to spoil anything to the listeners because I want them to go back and listen to those episodes if they haven't. But it was around 2016, 2017. I had just closed this $1 million project, and it was almost a lay down opportunity. This was in the traditional fueling world, and it was almost a lay down opportunity because of market intelligence that I had, and I also had a favorable solution to the customer, and it was just this lay down opportunity that had a lot of product, a lot of installation to it, and close the deal, whatever. And instead of feeling proud or inspired, I was just like, okay, cool. So this is it. Like, this is what I'm going to do. And, I was looking at it from the standpoint is, okay, am I going to chase revenue for companies and ensure products end with a favorable, ensure projects end with a favorable, gross profit margin? And is that what I'm going to do? Is that what I'm supposed to do? And
my purpose, is that my legacy and contribution to life? It's like, great job. You sold $1 million of fuel dispensaries and, so on. And not to take anything away from that, sure. Someone's got to do it, right? There's still a lot of, carbon-based fleet on the market, and they're not going anywhere away. But no, I'm just kind of, very.
You get it. And, I just was, after that, I just had this kind of, epiphany that I was not inspired, but I was kind of rather hit with the revelation that this would not be personally sustainable, and pun intended. It wouldn't be personally sustainable for me because I knew that I would get bored, and more importantly, I'm driven by the nobility of a concept and by a purpose. And so, I've got this frame hanging in my office. It has a message that says, "Go into the world and do well, but more importantly, go into the world and do good." And, you've heard it, and it's an inspiration. So, going back to your original question though, what drew me to Rivian, where I'm at now. And it wasn't, I'm abandoning the petroleum industry, because I definitely believe that there's a message, and I believe that there's definitely a purpose and a connection between me. And I feel like I'm one of the many components that kind of bring those industries together. And because I understand the petroleum industry and I understand clean technology, and, so when the call came from Rivian, I took the call, and, I had some other offers with other companies out there, but I was driven by the message of sustainability behind Rivian. I was driven by this purpose. I was driven by some of the key the driving factors of Rivian that drew me and compelled me to look at it. But this is my fifth year in the clean tech space, focused on the build out of publicly accessible EV chargers. And I currently work in our company's energy and charging division, covering the Midwest, focusing on the deployment of level 2 charging. So
I see that you're an EV education and charging consultant. So I really, really, really love that title, because my whole motto in life and in work is education. I love education. I love knowledge, acquiring knowledge, sharing knowledge, teaching, learning, building. It's all part of the beautiful journey of becoming, a very elite version of yourself, right? But I just kind of wanted to give you some props on that title, because I am a big fan of that. And I do believe that there's a huge gap in education, and people are craving it. I cannot tell you, it doesn't matter where I am in the world. If someone asks me, what do you do? And I say, oh yeah, I have this business that installs solar and, battery backup, backup power systems and EV charging stations. Like, their mind, I see it in their eyes, right? And I see it and they have questions and that are unanswered, right? Or just concerns that have never been released, right? And vented. And I love getting into those conversations with people, and I'll always see it. My wife will give me the side eye, like, here my, Mo goes again. Like, I was just in Belize last week. And I had like 15 conversations with people that led into like, oh my God, tell me about this or that or the other. And there wasn't a single dull moment, right? Like, if I told people, I make widgets, okay, cool, man. Like, go make more widgets. But you know what I mean? But it's pretty shocking. You see the reaction from people, because there's a huge gap in education. And so really, like, I tell people all the time, I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm here to educate you, right, and see if this is even going to fix your problem, because it may not, or it may add to it, and it may add a problem on my plate that I don't want, but the reality is there's a lot of misconception. There's a lot of miseducation. And it is imperative on the industry, especially when, these are newer industries. So a lot of times you get like the wild, wild west effect. People coming in, they're going to start, seeing grants and opportunities coming out from the federal government and municipalities and so on. And they're going to try to snatch up as much of that as possible. But I think there's a lot of implications that people don't really understand, or whether it's you make a bad solar investment, you make a bad battery investment, you make a bad EV charging investment, right? So I'm kind of curious, what's been your experience in the educational side of things? Where are the biggest gaps still? Where are people not quite understanding? Is it the monetization of dispensing of electrons? Is it the additional electrical infrastructure costs that you might be incurred? What is it exactly? What have you seen?
Yeah, well, so there's actually a couple of different sets of barriers to entry when it comes to the business side of things, or even the consumer side of things. We know that the typical consumer objections are, I'm not ready to buy an EV because of the options that are out there, the types of vehicles that are out there. Or I'm not ready to buy an EV because of the term range anxiety. I don't have range anxiety when it comes to my petroleum fueled vehicle, because I know I can drive any given direction and run into a gas station at some point. But the mindset of, there's not enough chargers are out there. And so those are some barriers to entry on the consumer side. Of course, even the cost of the vehicle as well. And, but really, I heard it said one time, and it stayed with me, that, the idea of range anxiety and the other things that are accompany the reticence to look at EV, it's really not about range anxiety. It's about experience anxiety. Those that are driving EVs, they don't go back to petroleum fueled vehicles. They don't, because it's almost like having an Apple phone, an iPhone, and then all of a sudden you're ready to go back to a landline. I mean, that's literally the same equivalent. But barriers to entry, we know on the consumer side, they're easy, but on the business side of things too, you tapped on something, about, the cost of fueling, the cost of charging, the ROI on the fueling, the charging, the EV charger, things like that. There's several barriers to entry, but and of course we hear the chicken and egg, just that analogy beat to death about the cars and the charging infrastructure. But I heard someone say it really well recently, and they said, we've got the train and we're building the tracks, and so we need the tracks to move the train, but they're building out parallel, and we're on a trajectory of both EV charging infrastructure. We're on a trajectory of battery. We're on a trajectory of vehicles. Like you mentioned, the Rivian R1S. And the Rivian R1T. Those are game changing vehicles that will catch the eyes of those that were 5 years ago when they looked at and said, there's only this vehicle option and that vehicle option. Well, now there's all of these vehicles coming to market and creating these opportunities. But hey, let's even go further back. Okay, the first gas station, it was built in 1905. That's the first time a public gas station was opened up for business, and that was in St. Louis, Missouri. But the first vehicle made its inaugural road trip in 1886. So nearly 20 years before there was a fueling center, there was a vehicle rolling down the road. And so, all the hangups about, I can't move towards EVs because of the infrastructure. That's really, it's really
screen.
Yeah.
Because how often are people driving more than 300 miles in a day?
Exactly.
How often are you driving into a super rural, non-metropolitan area where you can't find a charger within 300 miles? You know what I mean? Yeah. How often are you going to a place where there's not even an electrical cord or an electrical outlet that you could plug a 110 into if you're going to stay there for a couple of days and charge it at a slow, slower rate? But it's definitely plausible. I just think that, you brought up some good points about the number of models, the availability of them. Some people kind of using the range anxiety as I can't do that because I drive, more than 300 miles once a year, there's definitely a ton of considerations. One of the things so I was watching a Ben Sullins YouTube video recently where he compares the Cybertruck, the Rivian R1T, and the Ford F-150. So long story short, he ends up saying, he's ordering an R1T. And I think he actually recently released another video. He's a famous YouTuber. I don't know if you've watched his videos. I'm sure you have. Ben Sullins, maybe. Okay. All right. So no, but check him out. So he's a super cool YouTuber, and he's got his second video. He says, I'm actually changing to an R1S. All right. But then he basically boils down the Rivian as like the adventure truck, right? He boils down like your Tesla as like the techie truck. He boils down the, Rivian as like the adventurous truck. And then he, boils down the Ford F-150 as like the utilitarian truck. And I think that's a pretty good assessment of the three vehicles. I'm not sitting here saying one vehicle is worse than the other or any of that. Like I'm into any electric car, right? But I really am interested in how the design concepts came around the Rivian, because there's like super cool, like camping, you can put a camper up there, you can stick out a kitchen and a grill, right? And do all these so I kind of want to know where that inspiration came from. If you know the backstory of it. And if not, tell me just about the culture of how you guys are so focused on an electric adventure truck, which is really what it seems, electric adventure SUV, really awesome design, exterior, interior, long range vehicles, right? So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can't speak too much in depth only because of lack of experience. Since I've been at Rivian, it's been heads down on, kind of my mission in the space is the deployment of chargers. That's where I live and breathe, is on the deployment of the infrastructure to get the chargers out there in the public so everyone can charge.
So let me dive into that then. Let me dive into that question, Jason, unless you wanted to chime in on my last one.
Well, I would just add to your statement, a comment, and that is, we recently heard some knee-jerk reactions to the Biden administration thanking GM for all that they've done for the EV space, or leading in the EV space. And, there's some that kind of took a knee-jerk reaction because, well, that should have went to Tesla, or that should have went to this one and all that. But at the end of the day, we're all in this together, moving forward in the same direction. Yes, Rivian has targeted a segment, like you said, the adventurous segment, and is going to market with a truck and an SUV. And we know that will appeal to a whole demographic. We know that each brand, just as within any industry, or just with even in the traditional petroleum fueled vehicle, there are products that appeal to certain people. And the point is, Tesla bringing their cars to market, and all the other brands bringing their cars to market, kudos to them for doing so, because at the end of the day, we're all trying to achieve the same thing, and that is to really reduce our carbon footprint today. That's really what this is about. Is about, I'm tired of riding behind vehicles and dirty diesel trucks blowing out gas, or blowing out dark fumes all over the place, things like that. Hey, this is the direction we're going, and kudos to all the brands that are out there doing that.
So as a segue to that, you talked about you're focused on the EV charging infrastructure. So since you guys are such an adventurous vehicle, are you guys targeting more of like rural areas to develop out your charging infrastructure? Can you talk a little bit about what you guys are doing on the infrastructure side to get Rivian chargers in as many locations as possible?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have, DC fast charging products as well as level 2 charging products, and on the level 2 charging, they're branded as waypoints. That's the way we refer to them, and the goal is to get 10,000 of those chargers out there in the market, and that's any and everywhere where people sleep, where people shop, where people live, where they work, where they play, where every vertical that you can think of, and the cool thing about it is these waypoint chargers will not just be available to Rivian vehicles, but anyone can charge on these chargers. And so it's not just creating this proprietary charging network that only a select brand can use, but anyone can use those chargers. And so, that's kind of mission critical for me, is to just get these chargers out into the wild. And, it's a pretty easy message if you can just connect with the people. It's the same thing like in the previous days, selling in the oil and gas industry, just connecting with the right person and crafting the message that says, hey, you've got these parking spaces that are out there. Why don't you just monetize those parking spaces and put a charger out there? Not only will you get the direct income from the use of those chargers, you're also going to get an increase in indirect income by the EV driver that is now coming to eat at your restaurant, sleep at your hotel, shop at your retail center, whatever, and hey, you're monetizing a parking space at that point. Because, hey, our cars spend 95% of their life sitting. So it just makes sense that while they're sitting, they be charging. And there's that opportunity for businesses to capitalize on that and deploy EV chargers. But just, crafting the message and finding the audience,
I love that. I love the way you put it. And I will say that one of my favorite things about an EV is the fact that I can just go home, stick it in the charger, plug it in, wake up next morning, I'm good to go. Do the same thing at my office where I sit 8 to 10 hours a day. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I never have to interrupt my day to stop at a gas station. So people that are like, oh, I have range anxiety. I'm like, I have gas station anxiety. Like, I swear, for me to go to a gas station and touch the dirtiest thing, arguably on the planet, and then, maybe hang out in an area that I don't necessarily want to hang out at, and maybe put my wife or my kids in a position that is less than ideal for a family. Right. I mean, it's just, I'm not saying all gas stations are in bad areas, but sure. I'd rather not even have to interrupt my day to stop for 10, 15 minutes. And then guess what? After I, you put the nozzle in, I go inside, I spend a few dollars, I buy some things that I don't really need to be eating. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, yeah.
Well, you're touching on a very key, you've touched all over some very key points to even the how crucial it is for the gas station convenience store segment to evolve. Because, for me, there's nothing for me at a gas station. I don't drink Coke. I don't drink soda. I don't eat sugary products. There's nothing for me at gas stations to eat. And there's certainly nothing there for me to drink other than maybe a bottle of water or, coffee, but that's about it. And so the need for them to evolve, not only from a charging and fueling, an entire fueling standpoint, but also what they have to offer on site. And there are businesses and future, forward thinking leaders in that space that are doing that. They're introducing cleaner foods, and they're incorporating EV chargers. But to your key point, going to get fuel it will become an outdated method. EV drivers, the two principal places they charge is just like what you described, at where they work, where they live, and where they work. And that balance comes to about a 60-40, or depending on the US, 70-30 split between at home and marketplace charging. And so I believe as people that are in my role and in my industry doing what I'm doing, I feel like as the more successful we are, we're going to see that increase in market, in market charging, because people, the more chargers that are out there, then of course people are going to the businesses to shop, and the gas station model, like you said, it's, hey, we can go somewhere to get fuel, or we can charge where we're at. And that's really EV charging is about. It's about charging where you're at. It doesn't have to become an event. Well, I got to go get fuel. It's, hey, we're going to go have dinner here, and they have EV chargers. So we'll take care of two birds with one stone.
Oh, yeah. I love it. So just to get back to waypoints. So you guys are putting waypoints. Waypoints, you said, are DC fast chargers or the level 2 chargers?
They're level 2 chargers.
Okay. And do you guys have a DC fast charger solution currently as well?
We do. And those are Rivian Adventure network chargers, and they are DC fast chargers. Yes. Okay.
And what is it at 125, 150? Can you share the specs on it, or not yet?
Not yet. and that's kind of out of my purview anyways, where even though, in my previous life, I've sold a lot of DC fast chargers that, I'm just, again, we've got our area of focus, and that's not.
You guys just recently shipped out your first few trucks, didn't you? Like last month or the month before?
In September, customers taking delivery. Yeah.
Badass, man. I love it.
Really awesome. Yeah.
I'm about to put an order in on an R1T, man. I got to tell you. I think, yeah, it's going to be my marketing. It's going to be my thinking green truck. I'm going to be like, I'm going to buy a green one, right? I'm put a mini office, tiny home style trailer that it drags around, that's got solar on the roof, a battery on the side, a smart panel on it. And that's going to be my go-to marketing event truck. Like next year, you'll see us at what is it that we were at Electrify Expo?
Yes.
With a booth that looks like that. So,
well, fully charged is coming back too in April next year as well.
In Austin again?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
No, that's great, man. So the really you're focused entirely on the build out of EV chargers, which I'm not surprised by. One thing that I think is an interesting concept that we were talking about that a lot of people aren't really aware of, demand charges, right? You and I had pizza a couple months ago. We sat there talking about kind of the dark secret of EVs. So educate our listeners on what the dark secret of EVs are.
Yeah. So, and it really applies to DC fast charging, where, if you imagine you had, 2 or 3, 4 DC fast chargers running at the same time. And, you got some Teslas on there charging, they're charging at their peak capacity. That site host is going to be at risk of demand charges. And, here in Texas, I believe our demand charges are about $9 a kilowatt. And so, that can be, that's why you got to have an intelligent, charger deployed that can manage that power distribution the right way and in a safe way. But then also, there's utilities. I'm very proud of the fact that, I live in San Antonio. CPS Energy is not only favorable towards, EV drivers and EV infrastructure, but they are supportive of it. And just down the road, we have Austin Energy that is, also supportive of that. And the utility, if I was just to oversimplify this, really the future of the future fueling provider really at its core is the utility. I mean, if you think about it, but as I said, in my region, these in San Antonio, CPS is a municipality owned utility, and they incentivize businesses to put in the chargers, but they are actually incentivizing consumers also, with I believe it's less than $100 annual fee, and they can charge on any charger that's out there that's owned by the city. But even Austin Energy incentivizing businesses to help offset their capital costs with installation, and they will allow that to be combined with other state and even federal incentives that are out there in place to help offset that capital cost. But Austin Energy, shout out to them, because they make it really easy for the consumer. $17 a month, charge anywhere as much as you want, as often as you want.
Wow.
I mean, that's the type of thing that is needed to help for adoption, and utilities like the ones that I've mentioned, they're doing their part to help the business understand not only the seriousness of demand charges, but methods to offset that.
No, it's very important that people have an understanding of how they're going to be billed before they start investing in certain infrastructure. I'm not saying by any means walk away from it. I'm saying be educated, right? Because that's where you get people, again, that lack of education causes people to then have a poor experience with electric charging stations, and then maybe go around advising others not to buy electric charging stations and not to buy electric cars because of their bad experience, when it really boiled down to a misset of expectations, right? Jason, tell us what the future looks like, man, for EVs, for charging stations. There's so much happening in the next couple of years. They say there's going to be over 150 models of EVs available for purchase, right? At the recent Electrify Expo event that we were both at, Benz is out there, BMW's out there, all types of, Hyundai, all types of manufacturers are just ready to go all in on EVs. Yesterday or the day before, I don't know, within the last month, Lamborghini comes out and says they're going to have their first EV by 2025. There's really no stopping the EV train at this point, right? Like you said, the train's left the tracks, but there ain't no tracks. It's kind of weird, right? Like, where's the train going? Because the train's left the tracks without tracks. Like, this is weird.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of curious, like, how do you foresee the future of EVs and electrification of fleet and the integration of that with renewable energy technologies and clean tech in general?
Yeah, well, there's so many OEMs that are going all in, and that if you're interested in that, continuing to be a customer of that brand, you will have to electrify. We've seen brands such as Maserati and Bentley and Cadillac. They're saying by this date, if you were to buy a new vehicle, it will be electric, fully electrifying their product offering. And so it's not really an option to buy anything but an EV if you want to, continue to be a customer of that particular brand. And so, so we're seeing this aggressive response by the OEMs to restructure their organization, to restructure their manufacturing processes, and that's in response to some of the things that the government at the policy making level is being done with. We know there's 13 or maybe even 14 to 15 states with a ZEV mandate. With really really aggressive goals. I believe it's California by the year 2030. If you walk onto a new car dealership lot, you're there to buy an electric vehicle, and that's it. That's what's going to be available for new car sales in that particular state. And there's whether you look at it from the OEM, whether you look at it from the consumer interest level, whether you look at it from government actions to keep us on this course. There's a number of things that I believe are just bringing us to this place that we will get to, and really. It's all for the better. It's new jobs. It's new industries. It's new opportunities across the board. I mean, I was reading an article just the other day about, a future position, an electric vehicle charger technician, predicted to make $80,000 a year, something like that, and, just different opportunities that are out there. I mean, you may mention what's in my LinkedIn profile, EV, consultant, EV education advocate. I mean, what in the world, if I'd said that's what I do, even 5 years ago, it's like, well, wow, you must not do a lot.
Laughed at, man. They would have told you to get back into the rig, the driller rig and get back to work. That's hilarious, man. No, that's I have seen like Bloomberg New Energy Finance reports about the fastest growing occupations, through 2030, and how clean energy lies in top 5, two jobs, solar PV installer and wind turbine technician.
Right.
Now you're 1,000,000% guaranteed going to have tens, if not hundreds of thousands of jobs around EV charging. You have the Build Back Better Act, that is going to catalyze and dump, billions of dollars into electric vehicle OEMs, charging networks, tax credits, who knows what else. I'm actually flying out Wednesday to DC to spend some time learning about the Build Back Better Act and how it affects renewable energies and EVs. So I'm excited. I'll come back and share back what I learned, because I don't know a whole lot about it right now. I don't think a lot of people really understand what will happen when this is fully rolled out, but I do know that there's going to be a lot of government support and policies that are supportive of the building out of these industries. So, if you were to ask me again, like, one of the reasons why I knew I needed to move away and transition away from oil and gas is because I used to ask myself, when I'm in my 40s and 50s, I want to be making the biggest checks, right? Do I think that I'm going to be making those in this industry, or do I think that it's probably going to come from some growth explosion type industry like the one that we're in. Like there is nothing that can slow down, in my opinion, outside of what do they call it? Act of God or something like that, right? Slow down these industries, right? Force majeure, supply chain issues out of China. Like I could see that, slowing this down. But I really believe that, this is just a side note too. I'm going on a tangent. Like we have to buy from America. We have to buy from American companies. We need to source as much and bring manufacturing back to America, and not to throw any other nation under the bus, but because that's what our future depends on, is like the physical, not only virtual product, but like physical product too, and these are physical products that are essential to our daily lives in America. We are a commuter nation. Like we can't just hop on a, little, mini train and get to somewhere in 20 minutes, right? Like we don't have that infrastructure. We have highways, right? And roads and thousands of miles of it, right? So I really think that it's going to require a full couple of decade, kind of horizon, right? Just like you were saying, 1905, the first gas station was built. How many decades did it take until there was a gas station on every block?
Right.
I mean, just a few. And then now with the advancement of tech and everything else, and the fact that a lot of this infrastructure is pretty much exists and just needs to be retrofitted, right? Just needs some slight retrofitting, maybe electrical service upgrades, or, education around monetization and how to, do advertising or marketing or whatever you want to do out at these charging stations with these electric vehicles. And I think people also don't really understand how this is going to impact the grid long term. Like, our grid is 100 years old. I don't think, it was really built with the intent of being able to withstand, semis getting charged, every night and then going back out into the wild to deliver our freight, right? So it's like, everything relies on transport in America. We get things to the ports and then we got to send them all over the place. And the point I was going with all this is this industry is not going to slow down. It's going to boom. It's going to explode. It's going to continue to grow. It's in a growth sector. And that's what makes me super excited about it too. Like I know that next year I'll install more charging stations than I installed this year. And the year after that, I'll install probably 60 to 70% more,
Yeah, for real. That's right.
It's incredible. And then guess what? You guys are going to have more vehicles on the road, and then so is GM, and so are all these other OEMs, and then they're going to need more charging stations in homes, and then those homes are going to need electrical service upgrades a lot of times, or smart panels that need to be installed, and then there's going to be DC fast chargers that have to be installed for a bunch. So it's just, there's no end in sight.
Right.
In my opinion.
Right.
And I think that's what excites me the most about knowing that I've gotten into an industry where it's not going to be this huge, peak. And then all of a sudden no one's buying anything, or there's this crisis because, wars have broken out in the Middle East. Right.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
Well, cool, man. Any kind of closing thoughts? I wanted to drag you back for one final question.
Yeah.
When you were telling me about that epiphany that you had, where you closed this $1 million deal, and then you're just kind of sitting there twiddling your thumbs, like, is this really like what I want to do for the rest of my life? Mm-hmm. What was it that, what did you do from there? Right? How did you take action? Did this charging opportunity fall in your lap? And, did you just look up to the universe and say, thank you, universe? Like I was looking for something or did you actively seek out? Did you go volunteer? Did you go educate yourself? Like what tangible steps did you take following that moment, to drive you into now working for, this badass startup that's going to be pushing out thousands of cars and thousands of charging stations? Like, what was it that you did that has led you to where you are now?
Yeah, that's a great question. Anytime you're confronted with a reality or a truth, the epiphany, as I referred to it, you must respond to it. You have to respond to that. And so it's not just enough to be aware of something, but it's also to act on something. And so I realized I was confronted with this awareness, and I had to do something with that awareness. I couldn't just mull it over and say, I guess I'll just push through and keep doing this and enjoy, the monetary benefits from selling $1 million projects and hopefully multi-million-dollar projects. Or, I can begin to look. And so when you put things out there and you open yourself up to things, they will come to you. And so that's really what happened. An opportunity, to move and relocate. At that time I was living in Dallas, and I had an offer to move to San Antonio, and it was taking me outside of the industry. That offer that was taking me to San Antonio, and I'd already made a commitment. I was going to move to San Antonio, but then the other company recruited me. They said, look, we're wanting to future-proof our business. We're wanting to position ourselves for, what does the next 5 years look like? What does the, next 10 years look like? And so thankfully, I just crossed paths with a forward-thinking company that said, hey, we want to do that. And we've even considered EV chargers, but manufacturers don't want to work with us because we have petroleum in our name. And so I latched onto that. And I said, yeah, I'll do that. I'm a pioneer by nature, and I like to go out and do something that, I don't mind going out into just an open field and doing some work. I don't mind going out into an empty space and doing some work, because it's inspiring to do that, to push forward.
You're a builder.
That's incredible.
Even got the build of a builder, man.
Well, I tell you what, I really am inspired by doing that. And so, and when I'd been working for that company, I joined it in 2017. My epiphany was 2016, late 2016, early 2017. By May of 2017, I was with that new company, and in December of 2017, I had sold my first EV charger, and I was hooked by it. 34% gross profit margin attached to that project. But the bigger picture was, hey, I sold an EV charger for a company that wanted to be in the space, and I did it for them. I sold them I sold for that company an EV charger, but let's really think about what that EV charger is doing. And then, just months later, I was fully engaged in just going to market, deploying EV chargers, just, developing that business unit, just going out and just, preaching the message of EV charging to anyone and everyone that will listen.
And it's crazy, Jason, final thought is you would have never understood that opportunity if you hadn't already come across that epiphany, become aware, had that mindset that, I know the future looks different than what my present state looks like. And some people never escape that present state. They just stay in it, and they just brush it off. They suppress it. They go, week to week, paycheck to paycheck. They never reflect any deeper and analyze whether their life and work product are truly aligned. And so I applaud you, man. Congrats on all the success that you're having, that you will continue to have. I wish you all the prosperity in the world. I look forward to doing more installations, with you in any capacity. It's been a lot of fun so far working with you guys. I'd also like to say, keep thinking green, man. Yeah. I love your style. You're definitely aligned with me on thinking green and transitioning away and healthy relationships, healthy lifestyles, fitness, nutrition, business, whatever it is. Keep thinking green, my friends. Thanks again, Jason. We'll catch you guys on the next episode. If you guys are interested in any electric vehicle insights, feel free to hit either Jason or I up. You can find Jason on LinkedIn, Jason Cortes. I'll make sure there is a link in the show notes. We'll catch you guys on the next episode. Peace out. See you, man.
Thank you for listening to Thinking Green with Mohammed Abdallah. This episode was brought to you by Good Faith Energy. For more information, check out goodfaitenergy.com. Make sure you subscribe, give us a review, and leave a 5-star rating. If you like this episode, share it with a friend. See you on the next episode of Thinking Green.